All right, Bradley, it's all you.
Okay. Well, thanks guys for hopping on here. It's great to see you in this capacity here. And we're really excited about the governor's directive. The governor directive just came out that stated that counties across the state of Montana can opt into an all-male election, similar to how we ran the primary election in June. We were really excited about this because we have been in the process of trying to determine which polling locations would be open and available for us on election day, trying to determine which workers were going to be available and trained for election day, and trying to figure out how we were going to serve voters in the best possible capacity while still keeping everybody safe and healthy. With the governor's directive, we're given a clear path towards the safest, healthiest way to run an election, where we'll send every active voter a ballot in the mail, and we will have all of our active voters receiving that ballot, extended services for voters to vote in person at our election center, and a clear message and path moving forward starting today. So each county across the state's been given the option, similar to how in the primary election we were given the option to opt in. So we'll be working closely with our commissioners who had drafted a letter requesting the governor provide us this option to pass a resolution to be a mail ballot for the county of Missoula. As we proceed forward, we're going to take all of our successes from the primary. We had record-setting turnout, over 10 percentage points higher than our last election. So we're going to take those successes and we're going to expand upon that. A big area that we're going to really be focused on is increased voter services with extended hours and availability for voters to register and vote, as well as helping make sure that starting now we can do this outreach saying that this is the plan moving forward. So we have a full 89 days before the election to really let voters know that everybody in Missoula County will be getting that ballot in the mail. The governor's directive did also extend the late registration deadline. This was really successful for the primary election because this meant that instead of having to come in person and interact with a lot of different possible transmission points, voters were able to have extended time to register and receive a ballot to vote via the mail. So that deadline was extended forward to 10 days before the election instead of 29 days before the election. So that provides a lot of additional services for voters. And for this election, we're going to work to make sure that ballots are available, ADA voting equipment is available starting on October 2nd all the way up until the election day, so that anybody who does want to vote in person is given that opportunity to vote in person. So they have a lot of opportunities to make sure that their ballot is cast in this important election. Questions from you guys about the directive or plans that we have?
So they can start early voting in person October 2nd, and would that just be at the main one? Is that the only one that'll be open?
So we are looking into a satellite office event at the university to help cover during that late registration period. Since that has been compressed down to 10 days instead of 29 days, that has been our most fruitful satellite office. And then here at the Election Center, 140 North Russell, starting October 2nd, any regular business day 8 to 5 with extended hours closer to the election, you can appear here in person to vote. Yeah.
Okay, I'm annoying. I have a couple questions.
No, not
the first one is, I mean, we were just featured on that New York Times podcast about being one of the most smoothly run mail-in elections in the primary. I'm wondering if there are any hiccups you know of in June across the state that should be addressed before November.
Yeah, as was stated, we are that gold standard across the nation of highest voter turnout, best run mail ballot election. And it was really great to hear that. I think that the biggest aspects we're really taking into account. There's a lot of confusion around election laws, and this is a change to already confusing election laws. So we'll be working to help voters understand the changes to those laws and those laws that are currently in place. A great example of this is after hours ballot drop locations. Since this is an all mail election, they must be manned places of deposit. So after hours ballot drop locations will not be open to voters. And we want to make sure that voters are really familiar and aware of this starting now And that's why we're providing so many additional services, including election day drop locations, extended hours, and Saturday hours as we get closer to the election.
And then there's a lot of criticism nationally that we're hearing, especially from the president, that mail-in elections create potential for fraud. Have you seen any evidence that that's true?
So it's a great question. I got asked that earlier. I have no evidence of voter case frauds in my tenure here in Missoula County. In the state of Montana, it gets a little bit harder for me to know all of the different cases going back, but it is very limited, if any, cases in Montana. We have a lot of safeguards in place to protect the integrity of the voting process, from our ballot creation, ballot stock, signature verification processes, the fact that we manage every ballot through a statewide voter database so that no voter can have two active ballots on their profile at the same time. And then we work very closely and reach out to voters in the quickest method possible to let them know if there is a discrepancy, if they forgot to sign their ballot or a signature doesn't match. And that was one of the other areas we saw in the primary. We're really going to work hard to reach out to our normal polling place voters to make sure they're familiar with how to be successful as a mail ballot voter. One of the things we want to do is make sure their signature has been updated so that we can have that signature to match easier. And we're working on a mailer to go out to these voters right now.
And then lastly, for me, how about the Postal Service cuts? Is there any word or concern that that could play a role in getting ballots back or out, really?
You know, we work so closely with our local postmaster within the state of Montana. We do a really good job of trying to help make sure that ballots get to us as quickly as possible, that undeliverable ballots get returned as quickly as possible. And we're really fortunate that in Montana, we didn't see as large a delays in June as some other areas of the nation may have seen. As we go forward, we plan to continue working with the Postal Service to get the best service we can for our voters. And we will have to be really mindful of that. And that's one of the big areas where with this, every voter's ballot is going to be mailed on the 9th of October to them. And that way they can know if they haven't seen one shortly afterwards, that there may be an issue that they need to work with us. So they have plenty of days ahead of the election to help resolve any of those issues, and extended services in person if needed to make sure that that ballot gets counted.
How many counties do you think are going to end up participating in this on election night? As a reporter, I'm thinking, okay, maybe like 30 say I'll mail in and the rest are doing it the other way. And then we're waiting until a week later to finally get results. Have you been talking with the other elections officials around the state? Finding out their expression?
We did collaborate and work closely to draft the letter to the governor requesting the opportunity for a mail ballot election. And this is why it's so important. Each county can function in the best possible capacity for those counties. In Missoula County, we have 5 permanent staff serving 85,000 voters. And in other counties, they run 1 polling place on election day compared to the 28 polling places we have. So for a smaller county that may have very, very few cases, may have 0 cases, and may be able to recruit the half a dozen election judges needed on election day, they'll have that opportunity to run it as a polling place election and provide the best services to their voters that they can. We did hear from some counties that they would prefer to be a polling place election. I don't have an exact breakdown of which counties those would be, though.
Same day voter registration, is that, forgive me for not knowing this, on a general election, is that you need to have it done by, 10 days before? Is that what you said, or can you clarify that?
So that's our late voter registration deadline. And what that means is that 10 days beforehand, regular registration will close. What that is you can process any registration via the mail. During late registration for those 9 days ahead of the election, it means that you just need to appear in person. So it's not actually closed. The only time where we cannot register and issue a ballot to a voter is from noon to 5 p.m. the day before the election. For those counties that are running a polling place election, they have a lot of final processes that need to be in place to safeguard that election. So on election day, starting at 7 a.m., and every voter in line at 8 p.m. will get service. Very similar to June, even more important for this election because of the climate and the weather here in Missoula in November. We don't want voters to wait till election day. Everybody who is registered in Missoula County as an active voter will be mailed a ballot on the 9th. And if they don't see one shortly afterwards, myvoterpagemt.com can let them know if they're active, let them know where their ballot went. And we want them to be proactive in resolving this before election day, because part of this directive is that we will have the same social distancing requirements in place, same cleaning requirements in place, as well as the additional mask requirements for this election. And we want to make sure that voters are not waiting in line for an extended period of time, possibly in inclement weather. So we want to encourage them to be proactive and reach out to make sure that we can resolve it before election day. But 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., they'll all be available to be served.
Are you going to be sending out anything to help people through the process if they have questions, or are you depending on us to do that, or
So
card?
we're working on we have 70% of our voters here in Missoula County that are already vote by mail voters. So those are those polling place voters that we want to help be successful. We're right now working on a letter drafting out to them that explains to them how this process works, so that they know that they need to sign their voter registration, their affirmation envelope, their ballot envelope when they send it back, and we'll check that off of the system so that they know that they need to accommodate and allow enough time for that mail ballot to come back, because currently that deadline is 8 p.m. on election night. So if we haven't received it by them, it wouldn't count later. So we're going to work closely with our polling place voters to let them know. We're also going to work with our inactive voters to let them know that they don't automatically receive a ballot and they'll need to update to get that. And then we partner with groups like you to help make sure that this message is out there. And it was so successful for the primary that we're going to continue for the general.
Bradley, there was an effort before the primary, the week before, to extend the deadline for when ballots needed to be returned. Do you anticipate that happening again in the general?
It is very hard to predict lawsuits and upcoming election law challenges. It has been a very unique year this year. And as always, we're going to work really closely with voters to help make sure that they have the most current and accurate information for the election. As of currently, there are no, BIPA is enjoined, the Ballot Interference Protection Act. So there is not a requirement for ballot harvesting to fill out that form. And the postmarks have been deemed that they do not apply and they need to be received by 8 p.m. on election night. We want to make sure that voters are aware of these changes if they come forward, and it's so hard to predict what might come forward now.
Have you heard from the public? Are you getting calls from people for or against this, or have they not tapped into you yet when it comes to making their voice heard about this election?
We've received both. We have received that voters really want to make sure that we have the same opportunities that we had in the primary to keep everybody safe and healthy, complimenting us on the services we provided election day and the record-setting turnout, not just in our county, but across the state. Then we've also had people who are very concerned and cautious about our procedures, and we're going to be working so closely over the next few months to explain all of our safeguards to the public so that they're familiar and aware of them. And with this, the number one thing is that voters want a place where they can cast a ballot in person. And those services will be available starting on October 2nd, giving them multiple days instead of the 14 hours on election day the 13 from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. to cast their ballot. They'll have the opportunity to come here in person where we can void that mail ballot and they can cast a ballot like they would at the polling place to ensure that they know that their vote has been counted here.
And October 9th is when those ballots are being sent out. So just double checking. I'm good.
I have a question. Have you guys started training judges yet?
So we did a very robust recruitment and training throughout February and the beginning of March. We had to trunnicate our training in March for obvious reasons with COVID-19 pandemic. And we have enough judges right now to be able to manage a vote by mail election. We are looking into the possibilities of offering a supplemental training, but we're very mindful about the restrictions on gatherings as well as the demographic of our judges. And we want to make sure that it is safe and healthy. So we're trying to find a way where we can get our election judges trained on this critical job in a safe and healthy possibility. And we're going to try to have one for this fall. If we're not able to have one, we do have enough judges currently trained for this year.
Okay. Great. And do you believe that you've set up enough time for yourselves to organize the mail-in ballot for the general election?
And absolutely, with this is a jump for us. I like to call this our 30% jump, with 70% voters whom are already vote by mail voters. And with municipals and school elections being entirely vote by mail, we've had a lot of practice at this. And this was a big reason why Montana was so successful across the state.
Mhm. Great. And then, do you know when other counties are going to have to make their decisions by?
So we're looking into the same information as the directive just came out today. It didn't specify a date which a resolution must be passed. However, there are current mail ballot laws, and we're looking for guidance from the Secretary of State's office to come forward to tell us about those deadlines.
Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hey, when you say 70% already, is that just Missoula County or are you talking statewide?
Missoula County.
Okay. And do you know will postage be paid like it was?
Yes, postage will be paid, and we have worked very hard to implement business reply mail on our envelopes. This is a big benefit because this is a lot clearer that the postage has been paid, that instead of metering it on there, and this is going to be a net savings to taxpayers because we will only pay for the postage of ballots returned via the mail. Those ballots that were dropped off on election day at one of our drop locations or in person here at our elections office in the primary had postage metered on them. For these elections, we will not be charged by the post office for those ballots. So we had about 19,000 ballots in the primary election that were not returned, mailed out, but not returned at all. And we were charged postage on those, where in this case, we would not be. So we've worked hard to help make this better and have it be as inexpensive as possible on taxpayers. Any other questions?
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today, you guys.
Thank you so much for holding this so quickly.
Yeah, you're good.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Good day.
Okay, hang it up, I guess.